This is for the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, you ain't gonna touch me, you not gonna do nothing, you are not above me, I bet you wish you was me, I know it, I know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Only Hump Day, baby! Hump Day! What?
Oh my gosh.
Don't worry, I got you, because that was wrong. It's what's cracking, everybody. You guys already know. You guys want some Bitcoin, some Ethereum, anything you want, you go to Kraken.com.
We're not sponsored, but we do what we want to be.
All right, well, soon to be Kraken.com. Don't go there yet. Give us like, give us 2 weeks.
Until we
right?
have a referral code, don't
We'll be
go
back.
there yet.
Try now?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Good! It's Hump Day, baby. We're here. We are light a couple members. Christian not feeling so well. RIP. Shout out to my man. I hope he's feeling better. Landon Tice is out doing all the gamblings. He is in Austin, I believe, now. We should have like a little map tracking Landon across the United States, you know,
Yeah,
Vegas to Houston to Austin to the pit of despair, aka Florida. I don't. We have no show today.
No,
Absolutely not.
So
We
that
have no
was it.
show.
See you guys tomorrow.
That's it.
Thank
I
you.
just wanted to bring you guys in for the intro. Thank you all for being here.
Enough and on. We're pretty lit today.
Andre's already cut the
The
black.
pre-show was fire.
The pre-show was a little
I'm fired
out
up
of line.
today.
Yeah, Melissa's in a mood. Okay, I
All
don't
I'm
know.
saying is don't come get my wives' names out your fucking mouth. These are my wives. If you come for them, I have a taser. Okay? That's it.
You guys don't know, but she was literally in pre-production, just sitting here staring off into the abyss, firing the taser in the air, just to hear it pop a couple
ranting.
times.
Ranting and firing my taser.
just the sound is scary enough.
It's-
Come for me, whatever.
As a deterrent.
But when you come for my wife,
bitches.
I was gonna say,
It was on the tip of your
when
tongue.
you come for my bitches, we're gonna
bad
have
bitches,
a
though.
problem.
That's
They are
right.
bad
Yeah,
bitches.
we're bad bitches.
There you go.
Only. Bad bitches only.
Yeah.
We do have a couple of things to discuss today. There was a bit of news that broke yesterday, a little jarring, especially because like I'm in some of these groups, so I know how these scams tend to work, and there are precautions that can be taken, but like people get pretty loose with big fucking money in these chats, right? So to give a little backstory of what I'm talking about, there was a man arrested yesterday going by the name of
Good luck.
Oh baby, God bless me, Filipos Likonuakos
Close enough.
That was
Polychronopoulos.
Leah Nukanos.
Yeah,
You got
Lukanos.
the end right.
Whatever it is, 23-year-old man who was charged by authorities to have been complicit in a Bitcoin scam that swindled as much as $500,000 from a novice crypto trader. And the way that the whole thing worked was there are a lot of these OTC chats where peer-to-peer transactions take place. Most of them happen on Telegram, and usually they consist of a couple hundred people, where hard vouches are the operating system, right? So it's kind of just like you need to find a certain amount of people to make both parties comfortable hard vouching. And should somebody scam, which has happened a bunch in the past, it's actually happened a bunch in the past. What ends up happening is the hard vouches, then, you know, they either risk their reputation or they have to make good. And there are a number of instances where the hard vouchers have had to make good on like pretty big figures, upwards of like 2.5 million over the past couple of years. In this particular instance, and this is a scam that is a relatively common one, and there's a way to prevent it from happening, which I'll discuss in a minute. But basically, young Filipos fished someone else's identity. And what I mean by that is I think that this definitely happened on Telegram. I'm not sure if emails were exchanged or not, but basically he's able to create duplicate profiles, or what looks like a duplicate profile, right? And this is a really common scammer hack. So they'll just take like, I know that there was a scam running around for a while where somebody was impersonating Doug Polk, and like the O in Polk will just be a 0 instead of an O. And if, at first blush, it doesn't look any different, something along those lines. So it seems as though he fished the identity of somebody that was hard vouched for. Or actually, I'm not positive it was hard vouched. Those details aren't in the article, but you would assume dealing with $500,000 that there were probably some vouchers exchanged. So ultimately, he got the money sent to him, and the next day, when the person who sent the Bitcoin reached out to the business person asking about like the transaction or whatever, the other person had no idea what was going on. At that point, they realized that he had been impersonated and that a scam had taken place. It's a little unclear to me how he got caught. Again, this happens all the time. This is the first instance I've read of somebody getting busted. And the way that people usually get around this is to video chat. So you just have a live feed interacting where, you make it very clear that it's a real-time thing, right? Like I know like when I first got on Gemini, I got locked out because I lost my password or something like that. And I had to do a live video feed where I was writing on a piece of paper what they were dictating to me. Right. And obviously like they have my ID. So like the identity has to match. And, these are pretty easy solutions. Having been in these OTC chats for the better part of 2 years, it's crazy to me the amount of people that are willing to exchange 6 and 7 figures without doing due diligence.
Yeah, I mean, $500,000 that's a lot of money to just be like, oh, I think that's him, so
yeah,
I'm gonna send it on to his
but
address.
Okay, so like another fail safe is usually you'll send a test coin to make sure that it goes through the chain. So like if you're exchanging Bitcoin,
you just send
so like let's
$1,000.
$500,000. Let's say that they're exchanging somewhere in the neighborhood of 11 coins, right? 10 and a half coins, whatever. Usually you'd send like 0.001 Bitcoin and make sure. And we're still talking about like $100 of being exchanged in this instance, whatever. But it's $100 risk to ensure that everything's on the up and up. I've witnessed a bunch of 6-figure trades where the exchange is literally, do you want me to send a test first? And the response is no.
They can't wait that half hour for like that extra half hour.
No, just ship it. I don't care. It's
wild.
like, really? Because it's $1 million.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. But like, technology, it's fine.
Do we know how the guy got caught?
I don't. It doesn't seem that they were very revealing in this article.
I didn't see anything in
apparently
that
he
article.
did this 2 years ago and got away with it.
Yeah, I don't know too much about that. So
It was the same scam?
So I've heard a few things. First, I heard this kid's a poker player, which I don't know if that's corroborated or not.
I don't see him
I'm
on
sure he
Handed
plays
Mom.
poker. I don't know if he's actually a poker player though. Like I think those two things are different. But it was brought to my attention because the first headline that was demonstrated is poker player steals $500,000, right? So it seems as though he's at least in the community in some regard. And allegedly, a few years ago, he had stolen $600,000 from Cord Garcia. I don't know how true that is. And I don't even know if it was a Bitcoin scam or if it was some other form of potential theft, be it a backing arrangement where he won money or, some other, who knows?
Cord put out a tweet today. He's like, hey, Cord, do me a favor, Garcia. So I'm not sure if it was backing or sounds like something to do with coin transaction to me.
Right, yeah. Well, hopefully if that is traceable, Cord will be either made whole or, Mr. Filipos will have an additional charge tacked on to his sentencing.
Yikes.
23. Sucks.
Hey man, you're young, you take risks, you'll bounce.
Yeah, these 23-year-olds, they're just kids though, right? Maybe we should send them to juvie instead.
Well, he is a kid. He fucking got caught.
Yeah, I mean, he is a kid, but try him as an
35-year-old
adult. He's got enough of a brain to know not to do this shit.
Well, no, that part's true, but a 35-year-old would have got away with this shit.
I was
Probably.
gonna say, how many times do you think this has been done?
Oh,
Thousands.
I know people
Yeah.
who have gotten scammed for 6 figures like this. Like, it definitely happens all the time.
Yeah, this is the scariest part of us transitioning into a cyber economy is that in general, in any sort of cyberspace that we're dealing with, the crooks are always ahead of the security.
Yeah.
And
There's
it's
more incentive for them.
Yeah, way more. And it really forces you as a consumer or just anybody in the marketplace to really do your due diligence. But I mean, it's tough. Like, I remember online poker. Man, I have a really funny online poker story. Way back in the day, like 2005, when Party Poker still had step tournaments. So the way that they worked, it started at like a $50 sit and go, and there were progressive steps all the way up to, I believe, a $2,100 sit and go. And you could buy in at any step along the way. So this was massive back then, right? Like to play a 2K sit and go where first place is going to be like $9,000. No, more. 9,000, right? So it'd be 18K in the prize pool. Usually they gave half to first. I think it was like 50, 30, 20 split. So yeah, to play like a 2K sit and go where first place is going to be like 9K, those were big deals back then. Well, I started off like grinding sit and goes, and these steps were like really profitable for me. And I remember grinding my way through. I never really bought in anywhere higher than like maybe the $200 step or something like that. And I had made it to the next to last tournament. And actually, I'm conflating two stories here, but I'll continue on with this one. My screen name was the same as my AIM name. And
how old are you?
We're old, man.
I used AIM.
I was a teenager when the internet was invented.
Yes.
Or at least popularized. When I was in 10th grade, I took a class called Intro to Internet or something like that with I can't remember her last name, but anyway,
was Nikowski?
Nikowski, yeah. I took a class with her, and like it was literally teaching Nicastro, yeah. It was teaching you how to set up emails and stuff like that. I'll never forget this. John Bologna was in my class, and we were setting up Hotmail accounts. And so she's like, just type in hotmail.com and we'll go there and you'll set up your account. And he types in HOTMALE, and this dude fucking swinging his dick everywhere just pops up on the screen. And he's like, Mr. Castro, I don't think this is right.
Web one, am I right?
Sorry, back to your story.
I still have that email address, by the way. Somehow, mjberkey@hotmail. You can email whatever the fuck you want there.
Send your dick pics to mjberkey@HOTMALE.com.
Knock yourself out. I literally haven't checked it in a decade. But so my screen name and my AIM name were the same. They're both Berkey11. And this kid at my table like messages me and is trying to talk me into chopping the step tournament or whatever. And I'm like playing along, like, yeah, sure, man, we should definitely do that. And like as we get down to like three-handed and heads up, he's like telling me what he has and like basically trying to like if I go on, then he'll have X% of me and vice versa. And I'm like never agreeing to any of this. Man, I wish I could remember his name. It was like Run for the Wind or something like that. I don't even know. But basically, I'm just like, this guy's trying to fucking scam me.
It's tough fish.
I'm just going to scam him back. And I was just like, oh, yeah, man. Yeah, whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do. And I just fucking win the thing and move on to the 2K and just block him. I was like, well, that was probably what he was going to do to me.
Yeah.
But the real story I was trying to get at was this guy tried scamming because the big thing with the step tournaments were they were non-transferable. So if you win the $500 step, you get a buy-in into the 1K or whatever, right? Something along those lines. You're always progressing up the step, and you have to finish like second or worse to get cash.
Right.
Or you like remained in the step or went backwards in step. I can't recall, but anyway. Yeah. So yeah, I think I think that's what it was. You had to remain in the steps. They didn't give cash to disincentivize people from like just grinding
till you got to the last step.
Yeah. So what ended up happening in this instance where somebody tried scamming me is we were playing a step together or something of that nature, and he like starts typing in the chat. Somehow we started to exchange details on AIM, and he basically says like I have like a step 4 ticket, which was probably like $400 or something like that, and he's like, I need cash. Can I transfer it to you? And I'm like, I was dumb. I didn't realize they were non-transferable at the time. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like that's fine. Like happy to help you out. And he's like, okay, like I need you to send X amount whatever it was. It was a very small number, like $200 or $400, something like that. I need you to send it to Western Union.
Target gift cards.
Yeah, Target gift cards. And he goes, and I'll send you the step ticket in return or whatever. I can't remember how it happened. Like, I definitely made a transfer, but I think it was like for less than he was asking. Like, we agreed that I would send half, get the ticket, and then send the other half or something along those lines. So I think like what ended up happening is like I sent half. He didn't send the ticket, and he was giving me the scammer reply of like, it's in transaction or whatever. And I immediately knew I was getting scammed, and then decided to do anything I could to scam him back to recoup the money. So I think what ultimately ended up happening was I was asking him if like he was able to cash out on party or something along those lines. And he was like, no, that's why I use Western Union. Like I have to try to like move everything. I go, oh, okay, cool. I'll tell you what, like send me 500 on party and I'll transfer you the difference. Like I'll send you the 200 more for the ticket or whatever, plus the extra 500 through Western Union, and we'll take care of your cash out. And he's like, oh, okay, perfect, done. Sends me 500 on party, and I block him. So I made like $400 off the scammer when it was all said and done. I was so fucking proud of
I was
myself.
gonna say, you thought you were the smartest
Gotta
person.
teach him a lesson.
Oh, because the panic that set in the second I realized I was being scammed was so bad, and my knee-jerk reaction was like to obviously just be like, what the fuck, man? Like, you're definitely... But then it dawned on me, it's like, you've already gotten got,
Yeah.
and this guy doesn't know that you know yet. So, like, do anything you can to recoup that $100. And, like, the second that he bought the narrative of, like, oh, yeah, like, would you help me with the cash out? I'm just like, what's the max that I can get this guy to send me right now? Based off, like, the small amount of trust that we've put together with one another. So maybe I'm the piece of shit when it's all said and done. I'd like to think I'm Robin Hood.
You're like Dexter, but for scammers.
I'll take Dexter.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I mean, there's worse things to be.
Moral of the story is be careful out there.
Goddamn
careful.
right.
Yeah,
Do
be
your due
careful.
diligence. Be careful out there. There's a lot.
Especially in these like, gray market type things.
Do we operate in any non-gray markets? Like us as poker, crypto, sports betting? Like
I
what
mean, I
fucking
started
legal market are we in?
getting stuff from Silk Road when I was in high school. So that was my first black market. And I was like, whoa, you could buy anything here. And there's reviews. Like this person said this is the best ketamine on Silk Road. I'm going to buy all of it.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. Great ketamine. It was, though.
Best
it was very
delivery.
good. Everything
24-hour shipping.
Yes, and they would send it in like a little Chinese pack of cards, and then you had to like sift through the cards to find like the little baggie.
I can't believe that there hasn't been a movie done about Silk Road yet. Like, what's the hold up?
There's been
Amazing.
documentaries.
They
and
were
stuff,
selling
yeah.
like you could buy like a hitman on Silk
Yeah.
Road.
Oh yeah,
Anything.
Yeah.
yeah. They made
was
the dark web
crazy.
accessible.
It was crazy.
It literally made the dark web accessible, and it created a marketplace for literally anything.
Weapons, drugs, fake
Organs.
IDs, organs, yeah, babies. I mean, you could buy anything. Who
So-
knows how real the... I stumbled across a... because I went on dark web wiki because I was like, what else is on here? And then there was like this site that was human experiments, like documenting my own human experiments. And it was like day 1, pregnant woman administered like 600 milligrams of some, and I was like, is this real? Like, what am I reading?
I didn't
Where
find
is this happening?
I didn't find the Silk Road or like dark web until I was about 18, 19. I was already exposed to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Once I saw it, I was like, oh my God, what is
Yeah,
this?
was that like
This is
2011-ish?
ridiculous.
Like 2010, 2011? That's when I was on it. 2012.
Probably something like
What?
that. A little before
So,
that.
allegedly. I wasn't
2008.
I was allegedly on it. Okay, just let's make that clear.
So I've never dabbled with the dark web. It sounds like you have.
Yeah.
What methodology do you go through to access? Like this
Use
portal?
a Tor browser, and it's all the addresses are something .onion.
But is it like something that's just easily downloadable?
Yeah.
The kid that showed me used a different hard drive. a separate hard drive, and then you get on the Tor browser.
Yeah.
It seems like it would be pretty important
And
to
then all of
disconnect
your
this from-
messaging, they would have you message like, you know, your address and everything through like P2P, like encryption. And
Yeah.
so.
Man, I love it. So I have a comp sci degree. So we, especially like I started studying in 2000, graduated in 2005. So like that time the internet was very, very, very new. And cybersecurity was like one of the things that we had to take. So as an elective, I took a cybersecurity class that was taught by like a detective at the local precinct. And man, what a fucking joke. It was literally a semester of me looking at dicks in chat rooms. It was so fucking...
So you loved it.
It was awful. It was so dumb. So like literally, he would come in. We didn't learn anything. I knew nothing more about cybercrime other than like what was punishable.
Right.
By the time I left there, we would spend 15 minutes per class hearing the lecture. He would intro with some sort of like 15-minute long lecture, and then next 45 minutes every single day, twice a week for an entire semester was get on Yahoo chat rooms, pretend to be a 14-year-old girl,
Wait,
and send me all of the dicks that get sent to you.
So
No way.
fun. That sounds
It was
so
fucking
fun.
awful, man.
I would love to be a decoy. I always wanted to be one, and I think I could.
Oh, it was so easy. It
Yeah.
was so easy,
That's
especially
not-
like we're all dudes. So we're literally just in there like posing as teenage
Oh
girls.
my god!
I know that they do this, but like, isn't that entrapment?
I don't
No,
think.
that's what it's happened. So like,
I know
there's
they
a whole
do.
show on
Decoy,
it.
yeah.
It really
Capture
should
Predator.
be entrapment, I think, but like,
Well, yeah, but it's I guess it's allowed when you're trapping pedophiles.
right,
And on the web, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe.
There's probably
man,
some
the
sort
internet's
of-
wild. I know, like when we first got it, we were in high school, and like my whole group of friends, like Simmons and Jace and well, mostly Simmons because he was the one who had the internet first. But like we would get on AIM, and you could browse, like you could like search for people or whatever. And I don't remember what the parameters were that allowed you to search, but basically everybody was like ASL, so age, sex, location.
Sex, location.
So like we would just constantly be finding females that were like our age, like 18 female, wherever. We didn't give a shit, right?
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
And it was immediately understood that if a random person DM or PM'd you or whatever at that time, it was immediately understood that like it was going to be for sexting.
Yeah.
Always. And looking back, I'm 100% confident
Those are
because we
guys.
were always like posing as a lesbian girl.
Oh.
And we were interacting with other lesbian girls, and I'm 100% positive it was
just
just dudes and dudes.
You were just guys. You were just guys sexting.
Yeah, we were just a bunch of dudes
Yeah,
sexting our
that's
fantasies back and
hilarious.
forth to one another, sending downloadable nudes that we found on the internet back and forth.
That take like forever to show, like half at a time.
Yo, do you remember? This is wild. I'm on story mode today. I don't even give a shit. Do you remember Patrick, the preacher's son, who lived
Oh
Where
across
are
the
we
street
going?
from Gumby?
Oh,
Patrick,
I can't remember his
Son
last name.
that
He
lived
literally-
across the street from Gumby. Are we just gonna
I don't
ignore
wanna say
this?
his last name, but
First
yeah.
wait,
Okay,
hold
but
on.
I don't remember
We
it.
glossed over this earlier, but first of all, there was a kid named something Baloney,
Oh,
and
yeah.
now,
Bologna.
and now
Me and
there's
Melissa looked at each
John
other.
Baloney,
That's
and now
literally, no,
there's
that's literally his last name.
yeah, and there's B-O is like Baloney.
B-O-L-O-G.
Yeah, that's how it's spelled.
don't
John
know.
Baloney, and then there's Patrick, the preacher's son, who lives across the street from Gumby.
Fucking
Were you
Gumby.
guys in a children's TV show, an animated show? What's going on here? I'm waiting for like
This
Scrooge
is-
McDuck
like it
to
that
come out of
way,
the
yeah.
corner.
This is small town America. I lived a very enchanted life.
Gumby. Well, I guess I don't.
Gumby.
We can say his last name.
Yeah.
But,
His last name was Golmbieski.
Golmbieski.
Okay.
So his nickname was Gumby.
Very hard to say Golmbieski.
I
so
thought you were
we
gonna say
call him
Gumby Golmbieski.
Gumby,
No.
Gumby.
Don't be ridiculous. Anyway, Patrick had this scheme. So we were like sophomores when the internet first became a thing. It's even funnier because he was the preacher's son. He would come to school every week with nudes that he printed out because he had a color printer and the
Okay.
internet.
Nice.
And he would sell them for like $1
Wow.
a page. So we're just getting like a page of Cindy Crawford
Yeah.
from Fair Game showing her tits,
Right.
paying like $1 at lunch for it.
He's like the original
Smart.
OnlyFans pimp.
Yeah. Just slinging nudes
Yeah.
at the lunch table.
Wow. What an entrepreneur, though. What's he doing today?
Who knows?
I don't know, he
Who
probably
knows?
owns a
Let's
lot
get
of
Gumby
Bitcoin.
on the show. All right, call Gumby and John Baloney. Why not the preacher's son too?
Oh man, yeah. There was Gumby, there was Chi-Chi, there was Skimpy.
Growing up in that time, and in my time, growing up on the internet was when Live Leak was coming out and
Chatterbait,
and like E-fucked and like all these fucked up videos and death videos.
Oh,
that was when I was
Faces of Death?
That was when I was growing up on the internet. So me and my friends would just send like the grossest, like most obscene things that we could send to each other and try and make each other throw up.
I was like a sophomore in college when I first saw my first beheading, and it changed me. That was a dark
became
day.
extremely numb to anything like that by the age of 13.
I can't
which explains a lot.
I can't believe there was a period in time where like these, I don't even know what to call them, like these public crucifixions of people,
execution,
yeah.
They go on today.
They still go on, but like Jesus Christ, they weren't literally one click away.
I
mean, like you have to get through some barriers now to see it.
Do you?
I don't know.
Probably
I mean,
not.
I guess I haven't searched it in a long time.
I bet you could find
E-fucked
like
would
just
just
probably
be
is
like
the
a
first
random
hit on your
beheading,
search.
followed by like a girl puking on a guy's dick, followed by like some old guys penetrating each other. And
we've
then
been
just cycling through it like until you're just completely
We've been
desensitized.
through some real phases. I mean, there was Meat Spin that was
Lemon
popular
Party.
for that was the original Rickroll.
There was Goatsy.
I don't know any of the websites you guys are talking about.
No.
Not one of
Okay,
them.
so
Meat Spin's
we'll
not
do
a-
a segment where we show Conrad and we get a reaction video of all of his.
Meat Spin was the original
Tub
Rickroll.
Girl. There was Jar Guy. There was
Cake
Mr.
farts.
Hands.
None of
There was
this.
the Pain Olympics. I mean, there was everything.
The coup de grace was 2 girls, 1 cup.
Yes.
That was
That
the
actually
end all
did
be
make
all
me a
of
bit
disgusting.
nauseous.
Of course
Yeah.
it did.
Yeah, but most of them didn't, and that one really did get me a little. I can't do throw up, and then they're throwing up the poop. Like they're eating the poop, then throwing up the poop, and then throwing up more, and it's just like, whoa.
derived
Like,
that fucking
Why
idea?
did you make this?
God.
But that was the age of shock porn,
I mean, they got some clicks.
and I grew up
Huh?
during.
They got some clicks.
I grew up during the age of shock porn, so it
It's
just
rude
explains a lot.
And
Andre, you got a clip, right?
Bring up 2 girls, 1 cup.
Please don't.
and
Let's shut us
therein
down so
was
quick.
the birth of Poo Dog Melissa.
Then it makes all the sense in the world that I ended up who I am today. I was raised by the shock porn internet.
You were raised by the wolves
I was, the
of
wolves
the shock
of the
porn
internet.
industry.
Actually, I have a funny story about the first time I ever streamed, and it wasn't on Twitch. It was on Ustream when I was 12 years old. And I was just streaming with my cat, seeing who would come in and watch.
Ustream's what we
no.
use for Solve for Why.
Really?
Yeah.
So I used to just go on there and I thought it was,
That's
the
Ustream.
technology was cool. I was 12.
The streaming platform.
Oh, yeah.
And then I got raided by 4chan one day.
Oh no.
So I all of a sudden had 800 viewers, and I was so excited. And I was like talking to them, and they're like, do a barrel roll, and they're like, they go, write I heart CP on your foot. So I'm like, okay. So I write I heart, which is child porn, by the way.
Sure.
So I write that on my foot, and I'm sure it's somewhere on 4chan.
And you're also, like, 14.
I'm 12 years old, and
Yeah.
I have I heart CP, and I'm showing them the bottom of my foot that says I heart CP. And then at the very end, I told them I would take my shirt off, and I rickrolled them. And that was my first experience with streaming and 4chan.
That has built the person that you are today.
That
for
is,
sure.
yeah, rated by 4chan at 12. No business being on stream, but there I was.
And now look at you.
There I was. I heart CP. Yeah, guys, do you like this?
Now it's
Is
I
this
Heart Deep.
entertaining to you?
Now she just like comes on the podcast with I Heart DP on it.
Yeah, I heart DP. That's gonna be clipped.
Doug Polk?
Don't clip that.
Don't
All
clip
right.
that, okay, you sickos.
As much as I would love to continue down memory lane, I'm sure we could do this all day. We do have some news that's a little bit close to home. One of the friends of the pod, friend of the company, Nick Howard. Big day yesterday. He got 2nd place in the Prime Social 5K. Nice score for him. A little bit over 300,000. Really big event. Justin Hammer has been there for about a year and a half now, and it's been quite the growing pains for them. I think they missed the guarantees on the first few that they ran. That were a lot smaller, obviously. Like, I think they ran a 200K, maybe even a 500K that missed, but they swung for the fence here. They went with a 5K, $2 million guarantee and knocked it out of the park. I think he got like 2.5 million. Big shout out to James Kroll Daddy Carroll, taking down the title, winning the whole thing for I think 455K.
Yep.
Somewhere in that neighborhood. Kroll's a long time, old timey reg.
Mm-hmm.
The man has been through war and back, to say the least.
One of the good guys in poker.
One of the good guys in poker, yeah. Not really a fan of the boating anymore, I imagine. But save that story for the day that we actually have him on the pod. That's it. That's all I got. So that's gonna do it today. I hope you guys all enjoyed story time with Uncle Burke. I did want to talk about a little bit bigger of a topic, especially because I think that we do have a certain audience out there that is either young enough that they're taking on poker for the first time in their life, or they're taking on investments for the first time in their life, or new enough to poker that they need a little bit of guidelines as far as how to navigate this life. And we've talked a bit about this in some of the previous episodes, where it's like, it's a risky endeavor, right? Like poker is very much high risk, high reward, as are a lot of volatile markets where there's a fair amount of money to be gained. So whether we're talking about crypto or poker or sports betting and other comparable markets, your talent is rewarded, of course, but not without a lot of fluctuations. Nobody's graph looks like this. It looks way more like an EKG, even for the biggest winners out there. And the topic of bankroll management just comes up a ton. And it's ironic that I'm the one leading this conversation, but it's also kind of a byproduct of with age comes wisdom type of thing. Like, you've been there, you've done it, you've seen it. And I think I can speak a little bit more appropriately to this topic than somebody who just started with a certain amount or started with free rolls on Party Poker in 2003 and never had to deposit. It's like, yeah, you're blessed. Like, that's just not really a thing that can be replicated, especially not in today's day and time. And it's not a coincidence that we're having this conversation when the two people in our crew who have never gone broke happen to be absent. I think that all of our stories and pitfalls, trials, and tribulations can serve both as a warning and kind of as a how-to for anybody who's interested in this conversation. But even just on a personal level, I think speaking to the raw emotion and the maybe the emotional swings that you suffer through whenever your bankroll is flush versus bust. I'll kind of kick it off a little bit and give my trajectory and what I feel like I learned the most over 20 years of being in this industry. When I came in 2003, same time as Brian, it was a brand new market, and new markets always have first movers advantage. So being skillful, or at least perceiving yourself to have some level of skill in a new market where you're able to capitalize on a lot of the dumb money, so to speak, will just naturally give you a leg up on any future generation who tries to duplicate what it is that you're doing. So it'll always be very difficult from our vantage point to say like, oh, you want to get started in poker? Here's the ABCs of what you should do in order to be successful. And I found myself having that disconnect with people who are kind of in the thick of it now, where they're looking to build. Because when I was coming up, it was just play the biggest game in the room. If you go broke, find a way to get started again, and then rinse and repeat until something breaks. And that was kind of a tried and true method. I think it was Marchese that I was talking to this about. We were at the same table in the 2016 Super High Roller Bowl, and we were talking about some of the young talent coming up at that time, Fedor being one of them. And he made a really astute comment that I think is worth noting because it goes overseen by maybe the general populace, and it really speaks to survivorship bias. We were talking about just like how talented Fedor is, and he goes, yeah, but like he's not special. And we were kind of just puzzling, like, why? What do you mean? It's like, well, if it takes a certain amount of attempts, right? Like there's no predetermined amount of attempts before you break through. Some people get through on their first try. They win a free roll and never have to redeposit, right? But a lot of others, like myself, take them hundreds, maybe thousands of iterations of going broke or nearly broke before finally the dam breaks and you're rewarded with a positive upswing, right? So his point was basically, if it takes if one shot at this costs $1,000, for instance, and that's going to be what defines whether you make it or break it in this industry, you're dead. You literally have no shot. If you have a 1K shot at this, that's it. You are as close to 0% as possible to actually making it in this industry. And I'll kind of elaborate on why in a minute. But if you have infinite 1K bullets, you're almost guaranteed to find a way to eventually make it, because there's such a big learning curve through your first iteration and your last, that if you can get to the last, you're almost certain to acquire a certain knowledge base or skill set that allows you to be profitable in this industry. And his point basically was like, yes, I'm not taking away from the talent of Fedor, but a lot of that talent is a byproduct of having 1K reloads over and over and over again when the shit that he's trying didn't work out, right? That's really what it boils down to, right? Is when you're talking about bankroll management, is how replenishable are these shells that you're firing? Because the more replenishable it is, either because it's a small amount of money or because you have passive income coming in, the more risk you can take on. And this kind of carries us back to the Rampage conversation that we had earlier last week. He is able to replenish, maybe not to the full extent that he's losing that quote unquote 100K buy-in, but he's able to replenish enough to the point where he won't ever be out of action, right? He may have to step down a stake level. He may not be afforded to take as many shots over some time frame, but he is still in a position where he's going to be in action, and that is going to carry some sort of bottom line to it, attached to it, assuming he's a winning player, right? So he'll be just fine. If you have no ability to replenish the amount that you're risking, then suddenly going broke is an inevitability. And this is something that I've spoken to Conrad about a lot. It's the idea of the gambler's ruin. And what it's basically saying is, if you're taking on a certain level of risk, there's a certain level of ruin attached to that, right? There's always going to be a risk of ruin attached to taking risk. If you never reduce the amount of risk that you're taking, parallel to the depletion of your bankroll, you are certain to go broke. So in other words, if I take a shot and I risk 10% of my bankroll in a spot and it costs me $1,000, so I have a 10K roll and I risk 1,000 in one situation and I lose, now I have a 9K roll. And now risking $1,000 again isn't a 10% risk. It's greater than, right? And it'll continue to be that way each and every time. So if I had a risk of ruin of, call it 20% whenever I took my first shot, when I take my 10th shot, my risk of ruin is going to be damn near 100, right? It won't be exactly 100 because I can still win on that final shot. But even if I win and I don't reduce my risk, it will eventually become 100, right? I can never really achieve such a level of security that I don't ultimately go broke, because once I surpass the initial 10K that I started from to begin with, it's very probable that I'll just increase my risk proportionally to the bankroll, right? And that's the simple definition of gambler's ruin. It's why it's so critical to have endless amounts of ability to replenish. And it's also why I say that if you are young and the amount of money is small, taking on exorbitant risk is totally fine. Not because I think that it's the fastest way to be successful, but it's the fastest way to reduce your risk proportionally, right? If your risk of ruin, if you have 1K and you're risking it all, your risk of ruin is maybe 50%, right? And that's really bad for us. We don't really want to put ourselves in those sort of investment spots. But there's a million ways to make $1,000, right? You can replenish the $1,000 fucking delivering newspapers if you have to, washing cars, getting a part-time job at McDonald's. Like, you can replenish that $1,000, so you'll get another crack at this, right? It works inversely too, right? Like, yes, if you never decrease your risk, you're guaranteed to go broke, but Also, if you never decrease your risk, there's a guarantee that you will increase your bankroll at some rate as well, in which case now you do have to de-escalate the risk. So that's the whole reason to take on disproportionate amount of risk to reward early on whenever it's a small amount of money or you have other means to survive. Because once you acquire some money that's worth protecting, now you de-escalate the risk and your risk of ruin is very low. So in other words, if you turn that 1,000 into 20,000 by taking on a bunch of risk, risking 1K at a time over and over, where if you did this for infinity, you would go broke. Now we have 20K, you de-escalate the risk. Suddenly playing 1-2 becomes manageable, right? Whereas maybe you ran it up playing like 2-5 or 5-10 because the risk was irrelevant. I think that, I basically said all that to kind of like prepare the conversation and just let everybody here speak to their experience. But that was something that was very hard for me to learn. Lamanda, you can remember this. When we moved out here initially, I was broke when we moved out here. I immediately had a 30K score, and I was broke again months later. Yeah. Grinding 5-10 heads-up PLO, a game that I wasn't very well versed in, every single day on full tilt. Do you remember Andrew Wiggins?
Yes.
Do you remember how much I would bet? I didn't know what I was doing. I was risking anywhere from like 1% of my roll to 90% of my roll on any given day.
Conrad just
Man
falling.
down. Like on any given day, because I perceived myself to have a skill edge, which I probably did, but to what degree and at what cost? Because the variance of taking on that risk in and of itself is so high, but it's also in a game that is infinitely more variance than the other game that I'm much better at.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because you like had no risk tolerance at all. Like, I mean, you would just
no intolerance
or intolerance.
Yeah.
And so like you understood the part about when your bankroll is low, you should be more risky, as opposed to when you actually have a roll, then you need to protect it. Where like I was the opposite. Like when like I would have a big score, then I was ready to go. I would be a lot more risky because I have money, so now I can be risky, right? But then when I would get down to like a $20,000 or $10,000 roll, I would just go into like panic mode and try to be as risk averse as possible. And it was obviously a huge mistake. And it's just like listening to it back that way. It's just like I had things completely reversed, and it was just from lack of experience and those kind of things that it was very difficult to understand like what I was doing at the time.
Yeah, I think you were more the rule than the exception. Brent was the same way.
Yeah.
Brent was crushing online poker when we moved out here. He was the first one to run up a $250,000 roll, and the first thing he did was back all of us.
Right. Yeah.
Like I can remember him backing me and Brandon at the same time, where we were playing a full Sunday schedule that was like upwards of 10K buy-ins, and he's also playing the same thing.
It's crazy to think about how much risk was being put out there at like any given moment.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, like he's a case where it all worked out. Right. I think he and Mercier are like two instances where it worked out perfectly. Half because they were so talented that they were outperforming the risk that they were putting up.
Right.
So they were winning at such a fast rate that the risk was kind of being neutralized. But also they were lucky to pick horses that were winning rather quickly as well. Mm-hmm. I had Brent only backed me for a short period of time from August 09.
When he backed you.
I've never put in that kind of volume again. From August of 09 until February of 2010, I was playing 6 days a week for 16 hours a day. Played everything. There was a tournament on
you were
Stars.
At that desk in the living room, like literally every day. All day long.
And I hated it.
Yeah,
I hated every second of it.
Miserable.
But I just saw the money in the streets. Like I couldn't lose. There was a tournament that we called the Berkey. It was a 109 on Stars at 3 p.m. every day. I won it like 4 days in a row.
Yeah.
And it wasn't huge. It was like 13,000 the first, but like it added up over that short period of time, which culminated in me chopping the full tilt Sunday special or whatever for like 100K. Over that short period of time, I think I cashed for somewhere in the neighborhood of like, I don't know, 700,000-800,000 and profited like 250 or 300K that I chopped up with Brent.
Yeah.
It's like, how lucky for him, man. Like that means that we were rocking off like $500,000 in buy-ins over like an 8-month time span and somehow managed to make 6 figures each.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like that's very fortunate. It could have went the other way. And then alongside that, same thing happened with Mercier. Like he was backing Brent, he was backing Dan O'Brien, he was backing Alan Berry, and he's also playing every single buy-in. I mean, nobody put in more volume than J Merce. So it's just like, and this was back pre-high roller, so like it doesn't seem like a lot, but you know, he's playing like a $500,000 schedule every year, and then he's putting 3 other people in a $500,000 schedule every year. Okay, that's like equivalent to what a schedule is this year, but understand that like the prize pools, though they were inflated, like these were huge events.
Oh man,
we're talking about 1K open fields, right? Where they're putting up a $10,000 buy-in and stuff like that. It's like, and there weren't the big scores, right? It was a long time before Brent won his bracelet. Yeah. And it was a long time before Dan went to Europe and crushed, and before Alan won his bracelet. But they all eventually got there. And Jay was able to win at such a fast clip that they were never a huge burden along the way. It's scary though, right? Like that could have and probably should have gone the other way for both of them much more frequently. All it takes is about a variance.
Right.
And that was what got me into the position of being broke in the first place. And Conrad, I think like you of all people can kind of attest to this.
No, absolutely, 100%. This shit hits home so close, you know, especially since mine being kind of the most recent here.
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, I never really had lump sums of cash, whatever. I always had the next bullet, but never really had the lump sums of cash. So when I came into a couple tournament scores this last 6 months, you know, might have lived life a little bit of traveling, shopping. But when you talked about risk of ruin to me a lot, I kind of ignored you because that's what Conrad does. But it's like, yeah, I understood.
I think you just have like this weird sense of pride and attachment to being the person who accepts being broke. Like, and I can kind of speak to this a little bit from my own perspective. When I first started getting to play the big game, I had tremendous success out of the gate. And suddenly I had more money than I could ever conceive. Like I just shot up from like being broke to having 6 figures again to now having 7 figures. All in, I don't know, an 8-month time frame. Literally, like I could look back and say, wow, 8 months ago, I had $0 I had negative money. I was in debt. And now here I am off of a $500,000 World Series, 4 months later, having a 7-figure influx from getting to play the biggest stakes in the world. And my mind just immediately went to, you don't deserve this, right? Not consciously, but like subconsciously. It's just like, there's a part of your consciousness that just says like, this is too easy and it'll last forever.
Literally the same feeling that I had, and what led me to like this among other things, but I ended up putting myself in a really bad spot in terms of like busting my whole roll, gambling, not poker, slots, and was just being extremely reckless. But I remember right after I had like my biggest score, just thinking, I don't deserve this. And then my bankroll had hit like its peak. And then I was like also in this toxic relationship, and it was just, instead of like taking ownership of it and leaving and like, you know, like doing what I needed to do, I kind of went into this spiral and just like avoided my whole life, like gambling. And I ended up putting myself into a spot, which I don't know if any of you guys have seen in the chat. There's somebody in there, you know, saying stuff, but it's, first of all, I didn't scam anybody, but there are still, you know, like remnants of my past that are surfacing like every time I'm in the public, where it's like, what happened was I ended up gambling a shared role with my ex, and then we broke up shortly after I had gambled that. He was like, it's fine, I expected that to happen, blah blah blah. of course, after we broke up, it switched into she scammed me, she stole from me, and whatever, it's fine. There was lots of messy feelings involved, and nobody's like completely innocent in everything. I was very, very reckless and very irresponsible, but everything got paid back. Everything is like squared up. And but I still like, it's still something that haunts me, because for me it's not that part, but it's the fact that I felt I didn't deserve anything basically, and it led me to like self-sabotage really hard. And it's something that I think I still maybe self-sabotage a little bit in. Maybe I don't take as many shots as I should now, or I'm overly like cautious with stuff, or I'm, you know, I keep myself sort of small because I'm afraid of, you know, like somebody coming and trying to ruin everything because of mistakes that I made.
Do you think you were conscious of this at the time?
Conscious of what? Like that I was...
Like this idea that you didn't deserve the money and you were sort of self-sabotaging?
Not really.
Okay, yeah, because that's my experience. So this is something I ended up working out with Elliot. And to me, like, this was totally outside my realm of understanding. But like, as we really worked diligently, what became very clear was there were certain monetary numbers that made me uncomfortable as a person.
Yeah, 100K was for me.
100K was like the first barrier, and then $1 million was the second.
Mm-hmm.
And I can look at both of those milestones and see a pattern of sabotage that led me to going broke. So off the first 100K I had, and it's funny the way that I do it too. It's not something where I go into gambling and like find all these destructive mechanisms. It's the opposite. I get super charitable, right? So like for me growing up, a big backbone to what allowed me to succeed in life as far as like my vantage point goes is the fact that I was essentially raised by a community.
Yeah.
So everybody was willing to lend a helping hand.
You feel like you owe the world.
Sort of. Like I have this mindset of like needing to pay it forward. And when I got my first nest egg, it was like I was caring for my sister, I was caring for my nephew, and I had friends who weren't doing quite as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
that would be me.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say I was a beneficiary of that charity, and I do appreciate it. But it was like, yeah, at the time, like I was struggling a lot, and you know, I wasn't doing well. And then Berkey has a score, and he's just like, I'm gonna back you, and you know, we're gonna figure this out, and you're gonna do better. And that didn't happen, and
yeah, it was weird too, because it's like I'm also managing his relationship with risk in a weird way, because I'm overextended. Right. He knows I'm overextended. He cares about me not going broke, and he already has a fucked up relationship with risk to begin with, because he's really conservative whenever it's meaningful and really like not risk averse at all whenever he's flush.
Right.
Well, he doesn't feel flush because it's a backing deal. But at the same time, I need him to play as though he's flush in order to actually profit. And it was just like this big, terrible thing. Second to that now would be like whenever I first got $1 million, I don't realize what's happening. In my brain, I'm the greatest to ever live. And this money is just going to like keep compounding.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have 10 million before you know it kind of thing. But what ultimately ended up happening was a lot of the same. Like I start paying for... like I need vacations. I need to get away. Like I need to escape a bunch.
And your standard of living sort of rises too. So it's
a little bit. It's very weird, because as little as I care about money, I'm strangely nitty about certain things, and it's really just like, what's up?
Just how you grew up.
Not really though, man. Like I grew up poor, but I also grew up having it very deeply instilled in me that I don't need money for anything. Like it's just a transactional thing. But it's more so that I'm not willing to pay for things that I don't see a benefit to. I'll pay for convenience all fucking day long, right? But I see absolutely no reason to pay 5x markup for this hotel room compared to that hotel room that are truly identical, with the exception of like you get a butler with this one. Because the butler I won't use, right? Or like the idea of spending like 1K on a meal versus like $30 on a meal, where in both regards I'm just getting an okay steak.
Yeah. Well, we know,
right?
We know how you feel about fine dining.
Yeah, it's just like little nuanced things like that. Like
but if it's something
I just
saves you time. Like
Yes.
time is like invaluable. So like, if
Correct.
it saves me time, I will pay for that. if I
That's
have
the
means to
resource
do it.
I'm most
Right.
interested in accruing. Yeah. But yeah, like I wanted everybody, it wasn't so much that my lifestyle changed that much because I've always been a spender. I've always been somebody who does not hold on to money. Like if I have it, I'm willing to exchange it for experience, for time, for convenience, things of that nature. Because I truly believe that's what it's best utilized for. Like, I'm not saying I could have wrote Die With Zero before Bill, but like I understand that philosophy very, very well. But it was more so I wanted to raise everyone else's standards around me. So everybody else who grew up the way that I grew up, that I've known my whole life, it's like, hey, I got a beach, like come. I don't care. It costs you nothing. I'll fly you out. Like, let's just do all this stuff. And I just start spending hand over fist. I obviously don't go broke off this number, but this is where I needed to bring Elliot in because it was now affecting my play.
Because it's literally like just a drain.
Yeah. So I'm watching myself leak money in one area, and then I'm playing like trash on the other side of it because I'm trying to regress to a number that I'm comfortable with. Right?
Yeah.
I got comfortable at $500,000 and I don't deserve $1 million subconsciously. So I'm really trying to force myself into this regression. And I spend like the better part of a half a year just buried in makeup.
Yeah.
Like going from being a 3 million winner to being like in the whole 2 million. And it's just like, what the fuck has just happened here?
Yeah.
And, you know, thankfully, I have Chin really to thank for this because I was very much of the mindset of like, this is variance. I have everything under control. It's not that big of a deal. Like, all I have to do is keep playing. But internally, I knew that wasn't true because every time I got the text to come play, a wash would come over me. I wasn't excited anymore.
Yeah.
I wasn't like pumped to go play 3-6-12 with a bunch of people that I knew I had a big win rate versus. It was just more so like, today's the day my backers are going to cut me.
Yeah.
Every single day I would show up.
Like
Every day I would show up. It was just like, today's the day where the leash gets shortened to a point where I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Thank God they like had the foresight to recognize that like I'm still winning and all I had to do is turn around. And it's like, we did the impossible. Truly though, it's crazy to talk about these numbers in these terms, but it might have literally just been variance.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, yeah, I went on a 5 million downswing, but we were playing like upwards of 1K, 2K.
Right.
So it's just like, what are we even talking about here? We're talking about like 25 buy-ins. That happens all the fucking time. Yeah. And it was over a sample.
That's like a very normal downswing.
Yeah. And it was over a sample of like 500 hours. So it's just like, who has any idea how much of it was variance? I can attest that I was playing poorly during that time. But again, like I'm so biased. It's so skewed. You know, I'm just losing every single day. So of course I think that there's a problem that I can fix because I'm arrogant.
Yeah. I feel like going broke really changed. I mean, I just have gone over, like, this is something that has haunted me since it happened. And for that reason, I just don't think it will ever, it's not possible for it to happen again because there were such emotional consequences to it. Like, I just beat myself up like so much for like over a year. And it's something that I still will go back and be like, oh, because the worst part was that I bought Bitcoin and Ethereum with the money and then like proceeded to gamble it away.
So I kind of feel like the opposite for myself. Like, I feel like I'm Chris Rock and Will Smith in this situation.
Yeah, I don't know where,
the shit out of
like,
myself, all right?
I don't know
And,
where
like,
you get this. Like, you can just bounce right back and you're like, I'm going to go pluck that 25K bounty. And then you just do it. Like, for me, I'm like, I don't deserve anything. Like, I'm never going to show my face again. And like, I can't believe I've done this. I had all these like opportunities
well,
to
it's
like,
different for you too, though, because you're fighting against the narrative of being a woman who's not qualified to make it in this industry to begin with.
Yeah. And then I'm also having people trying to discredit like my trustworthiness.
Correct.
And, you know.
And like maybe even your abilities. So it's like, it's this double-edged sword where like for Conrad,
Go on. Go on, speak. It's okay.
I mean, it's like it's somewhat like what Melissa's saying. Like, this was the hardest thing for me to get through to you, and I didn't understand it because it's like you have this weird, arrogant pride with being broke, and like it's similar to what I was talking about, where like I was literally trying to sabotage myself down to a number that internally I felt comfortable deserving.
Not for nothing. That whole little spiel you just gave before, 86% accuracy.
Yeah, it's obvious in your habits, like the way you spend when you have money, the shots that you take. Like, you took endless shots. You played a $1,500 game. You bought into the $1,500 deuce event. And yeah, you cashed it. Like, fine, whatever.
I'll table it.
But final table. That's probably a min cash, honestly, an event that small. But it's just like, it's like the amount of arrogance that would have to go through your processing to arrive at I'm going to buy into this is more than I can comprehend.
I don't like. It's to me, it's not even arrogance. That's the worst part. Like, that's might be.
Do you feel like no matter what, like you will always like find a way to just bounce back, and that's kind of what gives you like the
problem is
okayness
it's
with
from
it?
where I come from. So like my early poker career is dealing.
Right.
So I've always, and not even just deal. I'm not dealing regular games. I'm dealing pretty big games where I'm making a lot of money.
Yeah.
So there was always a bounce back.
Right.
And it was a large bounce back.
So like
if I would sit
maybe
home
it
for a
is that
week-
you expect it and then it does come.
I mean, I'm not gonna say it, but manifestation is a thing.
Shut the fuck up. All right, low key, this entire conversation was meant to be an intervention for Conrad, but now it's going to turn into a dual intervention for both Conrad and Melissa for their goddamn belief in the dark arts.
Okay, I wish, I want to believe that manifestation is real. That's the thing. I really want to believe it.
Yeah, makes life a lot easier when you
Because-
can just wish on a
Yes,
fucking
because,
star.
like-
I went through that stuff, right?
Because
The
I've
Secret?
honestly
Yeah.
not, since I busted myself, I've not, bounced back to that point yet.
You haven't shot.
I haven't shot take because I have been, subconsciously punishing myself since then.
Once you shoot, you'll be all right. Don't
Yeah.
worry. You just gotta manifest it.
I hate you.
Maybe.
This is what I'm talking about, though, whenever I speak to arrogance, because I know that maybe you don't quantify it that way, but I don't know another qualifier that can possibly be applied here. It's like to say, I've never played this game before, but I feel like I'm going to win. Even if it's just like a sensation of I think I'm going to play the lottery today because maybe I'm going to win, right? It's like, okay, I understand the irrational human part of us that can fall into those desirable windfalls where it's like, if I don't play, then I can't win. That type of mentality.
Or when you think you're on an extended heater.
Yeah.
I never believe that I'm on a heater.
Same. And look, I understand how the brain can gravitate that way. The issue I'm taking with it is your shot paid off, man. You had 100,000 at this point, and the desire to now take 1.5% of it and just be like,
All right, you're wrong.
about which part?
At that moment, when I registered for that, I had $7,000 to my name.
For the 5K?
No, for the 1,500.
Oh, that's even
He's talking about the
worse.
1,500
no.
deuce to 7.
That's even worse.
And then after that, I final tabled the 5K. When I had 6,500 to my name.
Okay, I thought the 5K happened first. Obviously, but the crazy thing is I think between the two, if we put them and compare the quality of the shot take, I think the difference between buying into a 5K no limit in a relatively tough field in a game that at least you know how to play relatively
Are we
well.
talking about the 7 deuce
Yeah.
shot take?
Yeah. Versus buying into a 7 deuce MTT where you don't even know the fucking rules.
But
It's play
it's
the
a
5K.
strategy game. I'm going to figure it out real quick.
This is what I'm talking about with arrogance,
Right.
man. I've been playing
Whatever.
poker for 20 fucking years, and I would not put
It's also
$1,500
the
into
middle
that
of the
event.
Fine.
World Series. There had to have been a better
No,
option
actually
for
it
you.
wasn't. It was fucking 11:58, and there was 2 minutes left to me to wait
Oh,
reds, and there was
the
nothing
next
else to wait reds.
You needed to play that
You didn't
I
have
was
this
tilted. I just busted the 2,500, and I was
There you
like, "Fuck!"
All right, now we know
So now
why.
we're
I wanna
getting
go
into
play another
the
tournament.
train of
I just
thought.
want to get, I want to fire.
Yeah.
So it's this combination of desiring immediate gratification, instant gratification, combined with the arrogance that it'll work out if you feed this barbaric side, this reptilian part of your brain.
I don't
This
even think
literally sounds like what my brain was doing when I was playing slots.
Yeah. Yeah, you get caught in the blue zone where
Yeah.
you're just pull.
Yeah.
pull,
It was
pull.
completely irrational. Completely just need the instant gratification now, and it will come. It will. And then
How many
it's-
times do you guys see a deuce to 7 fucking triple draw game played?
I
What
don't
is it,
know. I
like
don't
10
look
times a
because I don't
year?
know how to play
But that's
that
the-
game.
Can't be that fucking good.
That's the
sure,
problem.
The top is the top, but the middle's still whatever. Let's fight.
Yeah, he's not
Right,
arrogant
but
at all.
no, of course this is insane.
arrogant at all.
Yeah, all I gotta say
arrogance.
is let's get it cracking.
All I
Bitcoin,
remember is him
Ethereum,
just
get it
saying, well, Melissa, you gotta get out there. They're so bad in this deuce to 7 tournament. And I'm just
Right.
like, I don't know how to play that game. I don't even know what the rules are.
Right,
Like-
you show up, you ask them, hey guys.
Like I joke that I don't know how to play PLO, but like I'm better than the average
You've
player
played
in a
more than,
PLO
like,
field.
the
I
average
still don't
NL
fucking
player.
enter. Like between the time sink and what I think my true win rate is in these things, it's not fucking worth a single cent to me.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. Like I understand that you feel a little bit attacked here, and like you're kind of like,
no, I don't feel attacked at all.
well, whatever. Like
understand.
you're responding in a very dismissive tone, but the whole point that I'm trying to make is that it's all about. It's crazy to me that you're on the other side of it and you're still able to kind of like justify the decision making in the past. You'll never ever get to a level of professionalism where you start actually quantifying your decisions to the magnitude of return, right? Instead, you'll just always be a victim of impulse, and there's no amount of money in the world that you can accumulate that won't allow you to go broke.
Yes and no, because like when I registered that 1500, like I'm sitting there, I'm like, what? How good are these people really? Like this is literally what I said to myself. How good can like the middle be? Are they really that
Better
good?
than the person who doesn't know the rules.
But that's not really true. I've played poker like for the last 15 years. Like,
Sure.
I can pick up games very quickly. Like, I'm not worried about that. So it's like, what? So whatever.
People
Fuck
who
it.
register that
Just
event,
no
people who
hubris.
register that event play that game.
Right.
How many times a year? 10? 15?
How many times do you
More
play in a year?
than zero.
Why? I got to start somewhere. What do you want me to do?
No, you don't. No, that's the thing is you
Why?
don't.
But why?
Because you only have a finite amount of money in this particular moment. This isn't a
There's an
one shot
opportunity
that you're going to
cost of
take
it as
1,000
well.
times.
If we're talking about from a money perspective, absolutely.
Well, obviously we're fucking talking from a money
Talking
perspective.
about registering the tournament, like whatever, I'm doing that. From a money perspective,
What
it's very
delusion
arrogant.
do you live under? This is maddening to
What
me.
is happening?
Well, I just meant like from a strategic,
metaphysical-
from a strategic point.
Right.
Like I'm registering. Like I don't care.
I
Do you-
mean, but part of the strategic standpoint is the
One to
money.
one. Like
Wait.
you kind of switch back and forth. Yeah.
No, this is worth mentioning. Like, do you understand that you didn't final table this as a byproduct of skill? Like, you final tabled it because variance swung in your favor in a game that, like, you almost certainly could not have possessed an edge in.
Oh, I definitely didn't possess an edge. I know that.
Okay, so
I'm
like
probably, but I'm probably not the worst. There's 100% sure of that.
oh, okay,
I'm
sure.
probably, like,
So
in
your
the middle
negative
tier.
edge,
So
your
yes, I
negative
am
edge is a
gambling.
little less than you think. Why not just go fire 1,500 on blackjack real fast? It
Yeah,
would save you
it's
a
about
ton
the
of fucking
same-
time.
I think my edge is way less there.
What?
At blackjack?
We just agreed you have a negative edge at deuce to 7. Why do you think you have a larger negative edge at blackjack?
Blackjack is fucking horrible.
No, it's not.
I've
What is
never
it, like
won, I've
50?
never
If
won
you
a
can
fucking...
count, if you can count, you can get it nearly neutral.
Oh, you can get it above neutral.
Well, slightly.
Yeah, I
but
think that neutral
But no,
is if you play
by the
perfect
book,
strategy,
if
right?
If you play by a book, you only have a 1 or 2%.
it's like a negative 1%
Yeah,
negative
one.
edge, 1.5% or something like that.
I've never won.
You could just play
Actually.
slots as fucking negative 4% or something.
Yeah, I mean, slots you're getting
Don't
you're
do
getting
it
crushed
though.
pretty
Don't
hard.
do
but
it. Everyone listening, I know there's slot degens out there, and honestly, like, it's not worth it.
Unless you can adhere to the Kessler method, whatever it is.
Don't even do that
Kessler-
because that's just a waste of your fucking time.
Kessler banks, man.
I believe it, but how many hours does he have to sit there and?
I don't know. He tried telling me about it. He basically said like he could guarantee that I would make $250K a year, but it made it also sound like it was a full-time job.
Yeah,
Like-
I was gonna
like
say, what-
$2,000
Spending a
year.
lot of fucking
I
time.
mean,
And you're
a lot of
getting
people
that
would
money
take $250,000
in comps
a year
and
as a full-time job.
Sure.
But you're getting it
I'm
in
not saying
comps,
you would,
right?
but I'm saying that's
But that's the thing is that like a lot of people wouldn't. It's not that black and white.
right.
So you have to have like 10x that capital
Right, exactly.
to invest.
Yeah, for
Which
sure.
means that you could be
just a
doing literally
tiny-
anything else to get
Right,
a 10% return.
exactly.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Right. So it's just like it's
You
it's
could
not
buy
as-
like some shitty stock. And
right. And I also don't think that
You
it's,
double that on Anchor.
Shitcoin.
I also don't think that it's like cash that's just handed to you. Right. Like I think a lot of it is just
It's in
like
comps, and if
Yeah.
you live here, then you don't need to stay in the hotels unless you're like selling your hotel rooms or something. How are you going to get the cash?
right. Like I'm putting
Or
my
it's like
hotel rooms
with,
on Airbnb.
you know, it's like you get this back, but with like you have to
It's like rake
free
back.
play it. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's not like
Yeah, you got to wash
don't
it all.
get
Yeah, it's a
cash.
fucking nightmare. Anyway, I guess like to put a button on this, I don't want to make Conrad the poster boy for bankroll
No, I mean,
management or lack thereof.
we've all broken ourselves.
Yeah, I
He's
guess
gonna be the poster boy for Kraken. Get cracking.
Let's get it cracking.
Manifest the Kraken.
I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that, and this is one that I was trying to make to him in real time, is that there has to be an amount of money that you can acquire that changes your view of risk to a point where protecting your current state is worth more than, let's call it, doubling your current state.
Like where it turns into like you have a nest egg and you're sort of chipping off a little bit to multiply that and then returning it to the nest egg rather than just throwing your whole nest egg into a roulette wheel
Right.
and being like, let's hope it hits.
Right. At some point, you get beyond the desire to look for multiples of return on your current financial state and instead look for fractional return.
Yeah.
Right. There's some number where you're not trying to double anymore.
Right.
There's some number where you're not trying, like when you have 5K, you're trying to 10X. That has to be like the goal that you achieve. It's like when I get to 50, I'll de-escalate my risk to something else. And like even when you're at 50, you're probably looking to double. And the reason being is because you get the ladder in the actual arena that you're in, the more you're able to acquire.
Yeah.
But there are certain thresholds that you reach where it's not okay to go from that current position back to zero, right? Like you cross the 100K threshold. Yeah, of course you can go broke. And people will and have, and I'm one of them. I can attest to it. I went broke off 300K. Like it happens. It's fine, but it's also not fine.
Yeah.
Right? Like
It's not fine to do again.
correct.
Like you have to
Correct.
learn to, like for me, like I honestly don't think that could happen to me again. And even now, like when you're saying like when you have a little bit and your goal should be to double it, I realize that I'm doing like what people should be doing when they have like a big nest egg and but I'm doing like these low risk things when I don't have a lot. So I'm just sort of making like a little bit
That's what
at a
Brian
time.
said he was guilty
That's
of.
exactly
yeah, and
what I
now
would
like
do.
I've swapped
Yeah.
to the complete opposite end where I'm just sort of not like getting anywhere because I'm just like not taking much risk.
You die that way too.
Yeah.
Should I be
You
scared
die
if I
a
can't figure
long,
out a number?
painful
Right,
death that way.
yeah.
What?
I'd be scared if I can't figure out a number.
Yes, Conrad, you should be like, you keep making light of all this, but there's a lot of deep-seated things going on that will never allow you to play poker professionally.
Conrad,
And-
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are you just like, you think you're addicted to like the thought of just being in the game, like having that hope and chance?
It could be slightly. I could definitely just being in action in general. Just
Yeah.
like, yeah, I could definitely see that.
Because like it seems like your framework for making decisions is completely different than a bankroll.
Yeah, I just want to be there. I want to be in the mix.
This is a bit why I refuse to partake in like helping you get back on your feet, so to speak, from a backing standpoint. It's not because I don't believe in you. It's not because I don't even believe that you can win. I do. It's because I don't want to further the narrative that you'll just always be in action, because I don't believe that to be true. I think that people with your skill level are a dime a dozen, and I think finding somebody who has infinitely more bankroll management than you would be a much better investment. So it's tough as a friend to watch you constantly get positive feedback loops for very negative behavior. And it's very difficult as somebody who wants the best for you to like get that through or to communicate that to you whenever the response is, it's fine, I'll pay it back, or I'll make it back, or I'll always get back in action. Because it's not fine. Someday you won't get back in action. Someday you will just have to face the fact that you have 5 or 6 figures worth of debt and no ability to ever get out. Because as soon as poker is taken away from you, so is the end result of you actually having the saving score. There's no other industry you're going to follow into that you can wake up tomorrow and just be handed 6 figures.
That's like crypto.
He's-
It's same thing.
I mean,
But
it's not true,
But crypto,
yeah,
and,
but
but
yes.
crypto and poker, they translate
thing,
very,
yeah.
very
Yeah.
much.
But
Yeah.
also, it's just
shows
not
the
going to happen in
managing
crypto
risk and-
either. We're
Right.
getting into a more mature market. You're not
Yeah.
going to get into crypto with $1,000 and wake up tomorrow with 100K.
Right.
It's very, very unlikely.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, that those days have come and gone.
But he can always find a way into a 1K tournament that he rips off for 125 until he just can't. So the second that gets taken away, how on earth do you ever eradicate like debt or even just a means to an end moving forward, right? And that's the big thing that I don't think people who are caught in the shit right now understand. Poker's a mature marketplace. You can't keep starting from zero. There are other people starting from zero that have a leg up on you as far as like drive or the ability to replenish or study or knowledge or network. There's just a million things that can be leveraged in a mature market that allow others to get a leg up faster. And also you're dealing with the barrier of having to keep up, right? This market is growing, not growing. It's shrinking while the difficulty is growing exponentially day over day.
Mm-hmm. The edges are shrinking like every day.
Yeah.
Except in those 1-3 match stack. It was a big edge there.
You're not allowed back.
Online though, those edges are tough online. You make like you have to be like you make one mistake and it just ruins your win rate for the day. Like it's tough. It's really tough to keep up.
And it's a full-time animal. Like if God, I actually wouldn't. If I had to start over tomorrow, I just like wouldn't. I would just have to find an industry with a higher ceiling that allows for more margin of error.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had to start over tomorrow and I was like taking the pursuit of grinding my way up online, you know, turning a couple thousand into hopefully a bankroll, starting at the micros. If I had to do that, I would look way more like Landon than I look like myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would be 12 hours of grinding followed by 6 hours of study, sleep, wake up and do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Like the time to eat, the time to socialize, the time to get in shape, the time to have balance is for when you're out of the shit.
Yeah.
And that's not a way that I want to live. Like even when I was in the shit, I always had the anchor of my day-to-day life that was so well grounded in discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that, you know, we breached on it last week. You guys kept pressing me to bring up the topic, but it wasn't the right format. This is what I was talking to my nephew about.
Mm-hmm.
He's in this place where he's 23. He has this passion for cars. He has the skill to rebuild cars from scratch, to tune, to customize all this stuff, but he's no outlet. And he just doesn't know what to do. And I'm telling him, like, you just have to be patient. Like, keep working on your craft. Something will break. You know, I'm giving him the encouragement to like start a YouTube channel. He's rebuilding his car right now, whatever. And he's passionate about it and he loves it, but he's miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you're miserable because you don't hold yourself accountable to fucking anything.
Mm.
And he's like, I don't know what you mean. And I'm like, I harp on him to eat well and work out. And that's it. And he's like, I don't care about those things. I was like, yeah, you as a 23-year-old Eric doesn't care about these things. I get that. But what you're speaking for now is 30-year-old Eric and 40-year-old Eric. And I promise you, he's going to have a different view. And it's not right because now is the time that you build the base for all of your future self. So if you have no discipline, if you have no accountability, if you have no capacity to answer to something other than your carnal urges, you're fucked moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, you're operating in the world based on reactivity.
Right. So every single day, he wakes up not knowing what he's going to do. He wakes up at odd hours. He feels groggy. He's not motivated. It takes him forever to get started. The only time he feels a sense of being compelled towards something is the actual time that he spends working on the car. Mm-hmm. Then after that, the project of filming it is difficult. The project of editing is because he's not passionate about that stuff.
Yeah.
And then the next time he feels fulfilled is when he's in a social setting with his friends or girlfriend.
Right.
It's like, yes, but understand those things will always be there. And they are some of the things that you spend the least amount of time on, right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw that article that kind of like went a little viral in the poker community talking about quantifying time remaining, right? And it hit home to a lot of people because it was saying like, you know, if you think about it, once you reach adulthood, you've spent the majority of the time that you'll ever spend with the people closest to you. Mm-hmm. And that's true. And he was saying like, you know, if you think about your parents when they live in a different state and you're in your 30s and they're in their 70s and they have X amount of years left, you may only have like 50 more times in your lifetime to see them.
Yeah.
Right. And that becomes very critical. Well, it's the same thing that I was like trying to convey to Eric. It's like, he's like, I don't care about working out. It's such a hassle. It takes out so much of my time, yada, yada, yada. I was like, well, at one point you cared. You were an athlete in high school. Mm-hmm. It was meaningful to you. And you were your best self then, right? Mm-hmm. You were disciplined. You were regimented. You were up every day at a certain time. You got this routine out of the way and it freed up the rest of your time. He goes, yeah, but like, it just takes up so much time. I hate thinking about it. It's like, well, the truth of the matter is the thing that you spend the absolute most time on outside of sleep in your entire life is wasting time.
Yeah.
It's doing nothing. It's literally filling the void.
Right.
And that's why you take such pleasure in working on the car and in being in social setting, because it's a distraction from the void. So fucking pick something heavy up.
Yeah.
Because it's a positive distraction that lays the framework for discipline, for accountability, and for all of these virtues that you're going to need moving forward if you plan to live a life where you're not working a 9 to 5 and answering to some corporation, which he just absolutely cannot.
Yeah.
He's tried.
Yeah.
He just can't do it. And I think everybody in this room can kind of relate to that kind of stuff. Right. And, you know, at the end of the day, like, it's another thing that I point back to. It's like, you're so undisciplined and so arrogant in the way that you use your money when you have it. It's a byproduct of the way that you live your day-to-day life, right? Like, you just don't have that thing that every single day you're committed to, right? Every day you wake up, well, you have weed.
4:58, wake up time.
I mean, you have weed.
Time.
You have weed, but
We got this podcast now.
and yeah, right. But he takes a lot of pleasure in that, and I see it. Right, he's always the first one to say, "What can I do? What can I do for the podcast? Give me something to clip. Give me something to search. Give me something to make." But it's because the void is so vast.
Hey, I'm losing my fucking mind. I am so
Right,
bored.
he's out of action.
So fucking bored.
Right, but it's also why you failed as a video editor for us. It's why you failed as like doing these simple tasks, because you're not dedicated. You had no discipline in the task. The more regimented we tried to make it, the more you pushed back against it. Right? It was like, here's the template for editing videos, and here's the amount of time it's going to take. Carve out X amount of hours a day. And you're just like, nah, fuck that. Day before, throw something together, looks like shit. Conrad, that's not good enough. And you're like, well, we're out of time. What do you want me to do?
Yeah, it wasn't exactly 100% like that, but yeah.
Wasn't far off.
No, it's pretty far off, but it,
Go
yeah.
on, I'm all ears.
I mean, it was a learning process.
Sure.
Yeah.
For a year and a half.
It was 1 year.
Okay. It doesn't take
It was
anyone
exactly 1 year.
11 months.
it doesn't take anyone a year to learn how to edit.
No,
And you
it takes
weren't-
way longer than that to learn discipline to do stuff.
Okay, fine. But like, you weren't even trying.
Well,
like, at no
I
point
think-
throughout that year were you trying to be disciplined.
I feel
Well,
like
that's your wrong.
honestly, in my experience,
Me
like,
doing it all.
and I think you might fall into this category too of stubborn people who do not get motivated by people telling you what to do, but you do get motivated by pain and reaching those like low lows. And if you don't let yourself like feel into that and feel how shitty you've made yourself feel, you'll never learn from it, because you just sort of will gloss over it and be like, it's fine. But deep down, like, there is a part that is like, fuck, I fucked myself. And I think for me, I mean, I reeled in that, and like, it has led me to be a little bit too risk averse, but it's also led me to make a lot of changes in my life leaks in terms of like, I buy groceries now. I try and keep myself on like a healthier eating schedule. I'm meditating and I'm doing yoga and all this stuff to just like keep myself from ever going back to a place where I'm going to put myself in such a shitty spot that I like want to die. Like, I never want to put myself in that spot again. So like,
I resonate with that in a lot of ways. I want to work backwards. The routines that you're creating, I would argue that the actual acts themselves may have diminishing returns, right? Like, meditating every day, meditating on the 300th day compared to the first day
yeah,
is almost insignificant.
right.
But I think where the compounding gains come from is routinely doing it, right? Like,
It's like, it sort of gives you a security in yourself that maybe you didn't have before, where like, okay, I can maybe trust myself a little bit more. I can feel safe in myself a little more than I could before.
I think, yeah. And I think on top of that, it also builds character in a way where you're like resilient. You're more resilient, right? You're like, I can do this every single day.
Yeah.
And understanding that determination and discipline, even if you don't necessarily even believe in the returns, but like,
And I quit vaping and nicotine.
right. So that's what I mean. It's like everything requires steps. There's no going from being out of all disciplined nature to quitting vaping.
Yeah.
Right. But developing discipline in the middle of that, in the midst of that, will lead to better habit forming.
Yeah, I mean, I never like planned on quit. I honestly just didn't think I'd ever quit, and then it just sort of, because like all of the other areas of my life were starting to balance out a little bit more, I just sort of realized like I feel kind of shitty, like this is going against all the things that I'm doing to make myself feel better. So like it's time, you know.
Yeah.
The time has come to get rid of this
and
one.
I think the idea of like speaking to gravitating towards pain, that's something that like I can 100% wholeheartedly both agree with and understand. And I think it's a big element of why I present so stoically and so, I don't want to say apathetic, because I'm truly not, I think apathy is like the greatest disease to ever plague mankind. But I think I present very neutral in my emotions a lot. Like maybe outside of getting to know me a little better through this podcast, the average perception of me is just like cold, distant.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
And I think that that's on purpose, because when I let myself feel the highs and the lows, I would be manic in those extremes. And what I found was, I talk about this a lot whenever I was talking about my come up and the idea of going broke, is we're goal-oriented creatures, but we stand to benefit the most from being process-oriented creatures, right? So you really have to reframe your thinking to process orientation instead of goal orientation. When you're in that lizard brain, though, and you're goal-oriented, what ends up happening is no matter how much money you have, 0 is much closer than an unquantifiable metric that is the high score.
Instead of like living in terms of compounding habits, you're living in terms of chasing.
Right, of resetting, almost, right? If I can just run this bankroll down to 0 and I can put myself in dire straits, what will end up happening is I'll start eating better, I'll start working out more often, I'll start calling my family more, I'll spend more time with my friends, and I'll figure out a way now to find something I'm passionate about that will generate income.
And then the cycle continues.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be some high score that you're uncomfortable with where 0 becomes much more attainable. And this is all like these emotional underpinnings that are built into us through environment, growing up, through trauma that we experience, or whatever the case may be, that if you don't fucking find a way to work through, you will just forever be that guy who's perpetually broke, who is like hitting up a friend for next month's rent.
Yeah.
And that, especially in a world where you have an option to be a worker bee or a leader, and you try to choose the independent path, nothing is worse than being the drain on everybody else in that arena, right? It's just like nobody wants to be the guy who's always in a situation to need help.
Yeah.
And that's always been something that really drove me in my own regard, is that like coming up the way I came up and having no choice but to accept as much help as I accept, I don't accept help well at all.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I just want to earn so much and I want to do so much for everybody else that I've paid it forward for 10 lifetimes.
Yeah. And you never have to feel like guilty about like draining other people.
Not even guilt, right? It's more so like if I stumble and anybody recognizes it, maybe they'll just offer without me having to patron them for help.
Right.
Because I just am too proud and too like rigid and against the idea that I can't be self-made. So it's literally just like this giant insurance policy that my subconscious created, where it's like, okay, well, we're very uncomfortable.
I mean, that's one that kind of works in your benefit, I guess. This insurance policy, maybe.
I'll be 80 still worried about like falling on my face and having nobody to pick me up. So like, I'll probably just be throwing weight around.
You're gonna be in the bathroom like bleeding out of your head, like, don't pick me up. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Just go in the other room.
Any closing thoughts out of you guys? Good.
Yeah, one thing. I've come at it from like the other side a little bit, where, you know, I really stick to regimens almost to a fault. And I just want to mention the other side just for a second, because I have a problem where almost I haven't lived my life because it's been rooted in so much regiment, and it's like the main thing that I know. So like I think you've actually been very beneficial to me, Burke, in that like you will go all the way in and then detach, and like you've done like a ton of ski trips this year, and I'm like trying to converge to your lifestyle a bit more. But as much as I agree with like, hey, find that regimen, find that discipline, you know, I mean, you know, my last 10 years has been nothing but that. And I'm kind of in a pickle now where it's like, well, I'm no longer with my fiance I was with her for 10 years. And now I'm in a position where it's like, what the fuck was I doing? I haven't lived life. And I think it's important to like not get too caught up with going down that regimen route either.
Well,
like,
I think it's less to do with regiment. And I know you well enough that I think I can kind of speak to this. It's less to do with the actual regiment, and it's way more to do with understanding the fluidity of priority. So the issue becomes when your void that you're trying to fill gets more and more fulfilled. What happens is now you have this list of priorities, and no one should be more important than the other. It should always be relatively fluid, right? This whole idea that we're taught traditionally that like family and friends above all, and then work or career above all, and then like I guess self above all, whenever we're talking about like ranking importance, right? Think about how that plays out in a day-to-day world, right? You wake up and the first thing on your mind is like taking care of your family and friends and ensuring that they feel loved and protected and served and everything else, right? So you pour a bunch of energy into giving them attention, carving out time for them, et cetera, et cetera. Secondly, now is career above all. So this coincides with number one. You have to ensure that you're able to put food on the table. So you carve out 10 hours a day to be there on top of the extra hours that you've already carved out to show everybody in your life that you care about attention, right? So now we've taken up 12, 13 hours of the day of our 15 to 18 waking hours. Okay, so that leaves us a few hours left. Well, now we have to look at self. First and foremost, I have to feed myself. Then I have to ensure that I'm clothed and bathed and all these little routine things and find downtime for my mind to just relax a little bit. Okay, that's 3 or 4 hours. What's left? Nothing. So how have I gotten to the gym? How have I enjoyed myself? How did I make it out to the bar for the game with my friends? You don't. So the level of sacrifice always comes at self. And that's a problem because of the rigidity. But if you understand the fluidity of priorities, what it actually becomes is my family matters a lot to me. My friends matter a lot to me. My career matters a lot to me. I matter a lot to me. I am above everything else because if I can't be the best version of myself, all these other priorities fucking collapse. Mm-hmm. So I carve an hour for the gym, and I carve an hour to meet up with friends for a lunch or for the game or for whatever the case may be. And I carve some time to do homework with my kids. And I carve some time for me alone to journal or to play poker or to do something that I enjoy. And when it's all said and done, what we recognize is on no given day is any one of those ancillary things that I've carved time for more of a priority than ensuring I'm fulfilling whatever is most necessary for me right now. So if I have a deadline, the most necessary thing is work. If I have my kids' t-ball game, the biggest priority on my plate right now is the t-ball game, and everything else gets sacrificed. If I feel like I'm depressed or down, the number one thing is me getting to the gym, period. And when we live that way, what happens is we're able to fractionalize our days, our weeks, our months, our years into utilization or into time utilization that fulfills us. But it also allows us to present as the best version of ourselves to everyone else that fucking matters. Nobody wants to be with a crabby curmudgeon who's doing it for your good, right? Yeah. Like that's the worst feeling on earth.
This resentful undertone.
Right.
Like I think that I could definitely relate to that. Like just putting yourself aside and not taking care of yourself first. Like, and it comes from like the way you grow up too. It's like you get the message that like you're not the most important thing to take care of, and then you sort of like unconsciously like continue that going forward and it's also in our society too. It's very like sort of now with self-care is like a thing, but I think that this hustle culture has really sort of like,
well, it's a weird thing because the notion I'm really speaking to is to be selfishly selfless. Yeah. And that's a weird contradiction, right? But it really distills down to just asking the simple question of, if I don't address this priority today, what's the worst thing that could happen? Mm-hmm. And like for you, Andre, I think that that's like where it benefits the most, where your plate's always full. And it becomes a matter of like kind of delineating what can I sacrifice today. And I relate to that, right? Like, I take a lot of pride in being able to sacrifice for the greater good and being disciplined and regimented and all this other stuff. But it's like, I'm not going to pass on a 4-day ski trip because I'm only going to get to the gym 3 days this week instead of 4, right? Like, I'll just find a corrective solution that compromises, where it's like, even if I have to do push-ups in my hotel, I'm still fulfilling this priority that's meaningful to me, but I'm not passing up on living my life in the process.
Thanks, buddy.
Very well said.
Feels weird in here now.
No weirdness.
We get back to talking about poop.
Yeah, where's the poop jokes? All
Poops
right.
tomorrow.
The people are loving this pod. That's all I got to say.
I know. I think it's like good to be kind of real and raw sometimes.
I loved it. It's real. Real shit. Like,
Yeah.
even though I am
I mean, this is stuff that's all affected us like in different ways personally, like really a lot. So, and I'm sure there's other people who are really affected by it.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, you know, we really hit home the way that we titled this thing. There was a Bitcoin heist, and we talked about it for at least 80% of this podcast. You know, life advice by Matt Berkey just doesn't get the same fucking clicks.
Nope.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I know it was a little bit more on the serious side of things. We'll be back tomorrow. Again, I think we'll probably be less Christian and Landon for one more day. But we do have some surprises lined up. Maybe a potential guest somewhere in the near future. We'll see. We might even be doubling the female population. Who knows?
Ooh, that would be so fun. We can roast Berkey double.
Oh, yeah. That's... Keep my fucking name out your fucking mouth.
I do have something to say for anyone who wants to come for any of my wives. Keep their fucking names out of your mouth, okay? Mama Bear's here.
Right.
That's going to do it for us today. Thank you guys all so much. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment. It helps us a ton. We are here 5 days a week. Don't forget to pay attention to our social. We'll let you know when we're going live, usually 2 o'clock every day. We'll be back tomorrow for a little Thursday rundown of everything that's good in the world. That's going to do it. See you guys then.
Peace.